Hello and welcome back to my channel. And if you are new here, hey, welcome and we hope you join the family. Today we are going to be making a heart design bag, while I tell you about the story of Marlene Lehnberg. Before we start, a disclaimer. All the information in this video was retrieved from the internet. It is in no way my opinion. Their story may involve detailed accounts of murder. Marlene Lehnberg was a South African murderer who was also known as the Scissor Murderess. In February 1972, Marlene started her first job as a receptionist at the Red Cross Children's Hospital in Rondebok, Cape Town. This is where she met Christian van der Linde. They worked together in the orthopedic workshop. Christian was the workshop's chief technician. Marlene, who had daddy issues, was immediately drawn to Christian. Marlene's father was puritanical. He rarely showed any form of affection to Marlene or any of her sisters. She was never allowed to socialize growing up. Nonetheless, she was a very intelligent young lady. Her inexperience with boys and men left her innocent and naive. Many times she tried to get attention via her studies. Marlene and Christian started a father-daughter relationship, and after a year, it developed into an affair. Their affair started in April 1973 when she was 17 years old, and for the remainder of that year they kept secretly meeting up at Rondebok Common and Pardon Island. Early 1974, their intimacy stopped. Christian felt that someone was following them because his wife kept getting anonymous calls, despite the fact that Christian had declared that he would never leave his wife and family. Marlene was convinced that the only obstacle to them having a more permanent relationship was the presence of van der Linde's wife Susanna. By July 1974, Lehnberg was becoming desperate and started talking about leaving Cape Town. Christian persuaded her not to, but by September she had finally tired of the situation and decided to confront Susanna. At this point, Marlene is obsessed. She has the balls to call Susanna up and tell her how she and Christian are in love and have been seeing each other. Then Susanna, I guess in a state of shock, hung up on her. Then this girl called again, this time to set up a meeting. They met in Belleville in October and basically Marlene was trying to get a rise out of Suzanne so that she will leave Christian and then she can have the man. But not only did Susanna tell Marlene that she would never give her husband a divorce because of the children, she also added she didn't mind playing second fiddle as long as Lehnberg didn't mind either. It was obvious to Lehnberg that Susanna van der Linde was prepared to do anything to keep her husband. It was around this time that Lehnberg met Marthinus Charles Chogo, who had lost a leg in a motorcar accident. He had come to the orthopedic workshop to have an artificial limb fitted. He was unemployed and his disabilities, both physical and social, had destroyed his self-esteem. This may have made him particularly susceptible to Lehnberg's approaches. Lehnberg first contacted Chogo by letter, which she wrote to him care of Solly's Trading Store, his local shop. In the letter she asked him to come and see her at the orthopedic workshop, adding that if he was clever he could still earn good money. When he arrived at the workshop, Lehnberg gave him our 1.0 and asked him to meet her at the Rondebosch Town Hall at 7 p.m. that evening, at which time she gave him a bottle of gin and said that she wanted him to murder a woman for her. Chogo declined at first, saying that he was afraid of being sent to the gallows. After some discussion, Chogo finally agreed to Lehnberg's request. Several days later, he went to the address in Boston, Belleville, which Lehnberg had given him, later claiming that he planned to warn Susanna van der Linde that her life was in danger. But instead of warning Susanna van der Linde of Lehnberg's plans, he simply asked her for some money. She said she didn't have any and went back inside the house. A week later, Chogo and Lehnberg met in Rondebosch once more. This time he admitted that he was too afraid to go through with the murder. Lehnberg gave him a radio and promised that she would help him to receive an artificial limb if he did away with Susanna van der Linde. Shogo went to Belleville again, but on this occasion he simply walked past the house and made no attempt to enter. Shortly afterward, Lehnberg sent Shogo a second letter, again urging him to go through with the murder, using a knife if he had to. She got another message to him, asking him to telephone her at work. During the subsequent conversation, Lehnberg insisted that Shogo go through with the murder. She promised to give him a car and have sex with him after the crime had been committed. In October 1970, Lehnberg handed in her notice at the hospital and told van der Linde that she was going to leave Cape Town. On the 24th of October, Lehnberg collected Shogo from his home in Retreat and drove him to Belleville in her car. He was armed with a hammer which was to be used to kill Susanna van der Linde. Lehnberg dropped him off in the vicinity of Boston and sped away. Shortly afterward, Shogo was spotted by Susanna van der Linde. She was alarmed because she had seen him in the area on more than one occasion. She telephoned the Belleville police station and Shogo was picked up by the police about 2 blocks from her house. At the police station, he was beaten and warned not to return to the area. In the face of repeated failure, Lehnberg decided to take matters into her own hands again. A few days after Shogo's failed attempt, she approached Rob Newman, a 24-year-old engineering student whom she knew, and asked to borrow his llama pistol. When he refused, she asked if he would kill someone for her. Again he refused, but on the 28th of October, Newman's pistol was stolen from his room. He reported the theft to the police and suggested Lehnberg as a likely suspect. Around 8:30 a.m. on the morning of Monday, 4 November 1970, Lehnberg arrived at Shogo's home. She said that her car was packed and she was on her way to Johannesburg. But before she left, she needed Shogo to come with her to van der Linde's house. He claimed in a statement that it wasn't until she handed him the llama pistol on the way to Belleville that he realized that she wasn't just going to say goodbye. They arrived outside the house just after 9 a.m. Susanna van der Linde was alone inside. From this point on, Shogo's and Lehnberg's account of what followed differ. Lehnberg claimed that she got out of the car, rang the doorbell and returned to the car while Shogo entered the house alone and committed the murder. Shogo, however, maintained that they acted together throughout. Shogo's account was supported by a neighbor of the van der Lindes, Mrs. Murray. On the morning in question, Murray had walked past Lehnberg's white Ford Anglia twice in a space of 10 or 12 minutes while it was parked opposite the van der Linde house, and on both occasions the car was empty. Shogo said that after Lehnberg rang the bell, they went into the house together. When Susanna van der Linde saw them both, she became frightened and threatened to phone the police. She attempted to get away, but was tripped by Lehnberg, fell and hit her head on the door, while Susanna van der Linde was on the floor. Lehnberg struck her on the jaw with the butt of the pistol. On Lehnberg's instructions, Shogo began to throttle the semi-conscious Susanna van der Linde. Lehnberg then gave him a pair of scissors she had taken from the sideboard. Shogo said he remembered stabbing Susanna van der Linde 3 times, but the pathologist later noted 7 stab wounds, 6 of which had penetrated the chest. After the murder, Lehnberg squirted green dye over Shogo using a gas pistol Susanna van der Linde had asked her husband to buy after she had seen Shogo in the van der Linde's neighborhood. After warning Shogo that she would deny any involvement in the murder if he went to the police, Lehnberg took him home. She set off for Johannesburg, collecting 2 speeding tickets at Beaufort West on the journey. When the police brought van der Linde home to identify his wife, he casually turned the body with his foot and said that it was his wife. This was reported at the time by the police officers present as appearing callous and almost as if he had been expecting it. It was suggested at the time that van der Linde had influenced Lehnberg in order to get her to murder his wife, but this was not proven and he was never charged. Shogo kept both of the pistols that were used at the scene of the crime, which were later seized by police. When he was asked why he hadn't discarded Then he replied that it was dangerous to throw pistols away. Susanna van der Linde's body was discovered at about 1 p.m. by her daughter. Van der Linde attempted to telephone his wife a number of times that morning and eventually became concerned when there was no reply. He spoke to his daughter Zelda, who worked at Tigerberg Hospital, and asked her to go home during her lunch break to see if there was anything wrong. When she arrived home, the house was locked up, but through a window she caught a glimpse of her mother lying on the floor in the living room. The police immediately began an intensive murder investigation. Their chief suspect was a crippled colored man who had been seen in the area on at least 2 occasions prior to the murder. In fact, it was because of Chogo that Susanna van der Linde insisted that her husband buy her a dye pistol. At first, nobody considered that Lehnberg was involved or that she may have hired an assassin. Lieutenant Roland Fourie of the Brixton murder and robbery squad in Johannesburg went to see Lehnberg, who was staying at her uncle's house in Bryanston, and asked her to accompany him to Brixton police station, where he wished to ask her some questions. Lehnberg admitted on the way to the police station that van der Linde was her lover. She added that she had been expecting the police to contact her ever since she first heard about the murder of Susanna van der Linde from her mother. When asked if she had an association with a colored man named Marthinus, she denied the allegation. Fourie also asked her if she had once requested a Robert Newman to give her his pistol so that she could get rid of Susanna van der Linde. Lehnberg admitted that she had, but that the request had been made in fun. Although Fourie had no specific evidence to tie Lehnberg to the murder, it did strike him that she seemed unnaturally nervous at times during the interview, while Fourie was on the telephone to Cape Town. Another detective, Major Van Aswegen, began asking Lehnberg questions. She suddenly blurted out that she took Chogo to the van der Linde house, waited for him outside, and took him home afterwards. Lehnberg was arrested and formally charged with the murder of Susanna van der Linde. Later that day, she made a full statement in which she admitted that she had asked Chogo if he would do away with Susanna van der Linde. In the statement, she claimed that she had waited in the car while her accomplice had committed the crime. Chogo was arrested the same day. The trial drew hundreds of spectators who fought for seats in the packed courtroom. After a hearing which lasted 7 days, during which the state called more than 30 witnesses to judge, Justice Demon and his 2 assessors, A.J. van Niekerk and F. van Zyl Smith, deliberated overnight and returned verdicts of guilty for both accused. The court found no extenuating circumstances, and Lehnberg and Chogo were sentenced to death. 2 months later, the case was reopened on appeal. In July 1975, the death sentences were set aside. Lehnberg was sentenced to 20 years imprisonment and Chogo to 15 years. Chogo, however, was released in June 1986 and became an evangelical preacher, while Lehnberg was paroled in December of the same year. Lehnberg ended her life in October 2015. 5 days before her 60th birthday. She had suffered from osteoporosis for years and had also been diagnosed with breast cancer. She could no longer take the severe pain she was in and committed suicide alone at home and in relative obscurity. Chogo died in a car accident in 1992 on the N7 near Nouris in the Western Cape. The third member of the tragic triangle, Christian van der Linde, died a lonely man in 1983. After the trial, he moved to Krugersdorp so that he could visit his wife's grave on her family's farm in the Magaliesberg Mountains every day. He expressed remorse of ever having met Marlene Lehnberg. After the trial, a law known as the Marlene Lehnberg Clause was passed in South Africa, preventing convicted criminals from profiting from their crimes, since it was believed that Lehnberg planned to sell her story to the press for a large sum of money. I guess it's accurate to say everyone got their punishment for that poor woman's life. If you have made it thus far, Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoy. I plan to do more of these kinds of videos. Please let me know in the comment section what you think. I will put a link to the story in the description box. I will see you in my next video. Bye. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.